Ladies and gentlemen, your boy Suki MMA is back with another UFC breakdown and prediction show, and frankly, let's talk about how well we've done so far. First of all, for the first time to try and get this all done in 15 minutes, for a guy who couldn't get it done in under 40, I thought we did alright last week with about 20-22 minutes, especially for how fun that card was. And let's talk about just how well we're doing, guys. Overall, we are finally at the 300 win mark, so 300, 182, and 4 is our overall pick'em record. But more importantly, guys, we are 50, 22 and 1 over our last 6 UFC cards, and my favorite stat so far, we are 14 and 2 on main cards so far in the last 3. And my favorite part is the Nate Maness fight. I actually posted on Instagram that is a live dog to consider throughout the first and second rounds if he survives. So guys, we are actually one of the best to do it right now, and I don't think we're stopping. Super Saiyan pick is 3-0 over the last 3 and 9-5 overall, so let's get it. You know, when we talk about the 2 losses that we had on our main cards, you know, Rosenstrike, Curtis Blades looked exactly how he should have looked against Lewis, a lot more responsible and avoided a lot of the big shots. And Nate Maness, we already mentioned, that's the only second loss we've had on main cards. So that's how close we were to going perfect on 3 straight main cards. Now, we get into this card, and I gotta be honest, I do think this is going to be a lot harder to predict than the last 3. So we're going to ride those numbers and take it into this one. But, you know, it's a tough card to call, with a few fights being even, you know, some of the toughest I've seen in a little while, but we're going to get through it and we're going to have some fun doing it. And as usual now, we're going to be trying to do it in under 15 minutes. And again, I'm pretty excited for that. I think that we're going to be able to do it a lot closer this time. Let's hope we can bang through these fights. And so without further ado, let's get UFC Vegas 38 prediction show underway. First fight, I think it's been switched, but we're going to go with Alejandro Pérez and Johnny Eduardo. And now the one thing that everybody is talking about is just the gap in action that these two have had. Now, that can either go, you know, 2 ways. You either use the time wisely and get better in a lot of the things that you probably weren't so good in a couple years ago, or it's just such a long layoff that the competition at the UFC level is too much for you to handle. Now, I do think that Alejandro Pérez, for one, is going to show a lot of improvement. You know, he's a Latin tough alumni. The guy trains at AKA, a lot of great Mexican fighters out there, and the big thing about him is when he was fighting, I think there was a lot of great things that we did see. And the flip side is in Eduardo's case, we saw him kind of fall down the hill a little bit. And the big thing for me is not only has Eduardo lost 2 straight since 2018, but Matthew Lopez, who beat him before Nate Wood, went on to go 0-3 in the UFC, and one of the guys that finished him was actually Alejandro Pérez. And the one thing that I like here is if this fight stays very action-packed in the first round, I think that's where Johnny Eduardo has a bit of a chance to pull this upset off. But in my opinion, outside of that first round of just slug 'em style, I think Pérez has a huge advantage both on the ground and as the fight goes on. And it's really tough for me to see him losing this fight given the pedigree, recency bias, and just the level of action that he's seen over the course of his career. So I'm actually going with Alejandro Pérez as a minus 200 favorite. I think he deserves a number of that size. So let's take a quick look here. And I'm a little off by about 30. Opening line, minus 230. Eduardo coming in at plus 195. And then you have the minus 240 and the plus 205 at some places for Johnny Eduardo. So clearly Pérez is over a minus 200 favorite. I think that's very fair. Now, you know, when under, things like that are very live in this fight. And I think if you're watching this fight live, especially if it gets out of the first round and seeing how these fighters look, there could be some good money on Alejandro Pérez if he doesn't have such a dominant first round. And up next, we've got Shanna Young and Stephanie Egger. Now, the thing about Egger that I love is she brings this judo style fighting that we've seen, you know, girls like Kayla Harrison just absolutely demolish people with, but she does her best work in the clinch, right? She's going to want to get in close. She's going to want to wrap that body up, maybe get some trips and throws, and maybe work in some ground and pound, that kind of stuff. But the one thing that we saw from Young, especially in that Chasen fight, is she's a good striker. You know, she had a great first round, I thought, against Chasen before, you know, Macy really implemented kind of her game plan usually, which is the ground and pounds, the pushing the pace, and having those volume combos coming in. But Young held her own, and I thought, you know, if the fight stayed standing for 3 rounds, she would look a lot better. But unfortunately, you know, we know how Macy likes to fight. And on the flip side, Egger got a tough bout with, you know, Tracy Cortez, and that was one where we had Cortez, and on the flip side, we had Chasen against Young. But in this specific case, I do like the distance fighting of Shanna Young. I think that she's going to be able to keep the fight standing as long as she'd like. She's got good action. Like, she likes to push the pace and just gets it up against the fence and goes hard. And my honest opinion is I don't know how well versed Egger is going to be in the MMA side of things. And for me, that's where I really do think that, you know, in terms of having to walk through a lot of Shanna's punches and things like that, I think that she's going to be able to kind of have her way with her, especially early on. And if Egger doesn't have the energy to kind of steal a couple rounds late, this could be Young's fight to lose. So we're going to go with Shanna Young being the minus 170 favorite here. I think that she's done everything to earn that number. And so let's take a look at the line. I mean, she's a favorite, open as a minus 138, but now sitting at about a plus 115, plus 128. So we got a live dog here, in my personal opinion. Egger is going to be using the grappling, open as a plus 110 dog. Very, very low line there, but now she's a favorite at about a minus 150. So something to consider. I think that she does look good from a grappler, from a clinch-style fighter, going to be able to throw some knees, things like that. But look out for Young's, distance striking. I think that's going to be what really dictates where this fight goes and how well she can do it, because if Egger walks those punches, we could be dealing with a long night for Young. Up next, we got a fight between Gaetano, Pirrello, and Douglas Silva de Andrade. Now, it's so funny because I'm doing it absolute point to make sure that this show airs after the weigh-ins, because it's such an important part of trying to break down a fight. And Douglas Silva de Andrade, I mean, the guy's moving down. He's been there before, but at 135, he looks so lean. He didn't look too drained at the weigh-ins, and even in the face-off, he looked pretty good to me. And the few things that I want to talk about him with is, you look at the losses, right? Last three, Lerone Murphy, Rob Font, and Peter Yan. Like, what? The guy is an absolute gamer. He's already in his mid-30s, but we've seen how well he can do early on. But the only thing that I'm worried about here is kind of the cardio late. If he's not able to get the takedowns, if he's not able to score those big moments for himself to really grind out the fight. Gaetano Pirrello is a massive Muay Thai champion. His knees inside, his elbows, his big leg kicks, like these are the things that he's going to be using from the get to slow down Andrade. And if he's able to land some big shots early in the fight, I think this is a live dog in my opinion. But, with all of that said, I think that Andrade is in a place in his career where guys like Pirrello should still be someone he can deal with. And when you look at things on paper, just the recency bias and the body of work he's put together just makes me believe that even though he's not going to be the better striker, he's just going to be the overall MMA, he's just going to be the better overall MMA fighter. And I think that that's going to open up a lot of opportunities for him if he stays disciplined and avoids the big shots like the leg kicks and also some of that clinch work. So I'm going with the line of minus 240 for Andrade. I think that Pirrello looked good in his debut against Ricky Simon, but again, that's a man who had to take on a really tough debut to kind of go into this second fight, and I think this second fight's going to be surprisingly tough for him as well. So let's take a look. As I mentioned, I said minus 240 for Andrade, and I mean, open as a minus 200, and now about a minus 270 on average across the board. So clearly, our mind is in the right place there. Pirrello's a plus 170 opener, now about a plus 230 in some places. Everyone's, talking about betonline.ag. If you have faith in Pirrello, hop over there and get that plus 230 line, because frankly, that's a line that's probably going to be the top across the board. So that takes us into a fight where we got a little bit more of the bigger names for the pundits and the diehards, right? Jamie Mullarkey and Devonte Smith. Now, these two guys have an interesting, come up in the UFC. Mullarkey, let's talk about the only person to finish him in the first round. Alexander Volkanovski, and that's a guy who he trains with pretty often now in that South Wales area. So Devonte Smith, he's a 4-1 UFC fighter. He's a 3-1 UFC fighter since the Contender Series. And the funny thing about him is Kamal Worthy's a good friend of his, and that's his only loss in the UFC. We saw most recently what he did to Justin James via, that was more of an injury loss on that end, and that guy's tough as nails. So, I'm happy for Justin to get out of that fight just because in case there was any eye damage on that stuff. But look at the way Mullarkey has fought lately. I think that the striking has gotten better. I think that the big thing for me is if this fight goes past the first round, I think Mullarkey's got a great chance to grind something out here. I think that Devonte Smith is powerful and long, but Mullarkey has proven to be able to take shots from a lot of guys. Only been finished via strikes twice in his whole career, and that was over 5 years ago before the UFC. And you look at his UFC fights, guys like Brad Riddell, he's taken on some good strikers and held his own. So for me, I mean, it's hard to say that I'm not siding with the dog because I believe that Devonte Smith is going to be the favorite here. I have a line of about minus 170 is where I put him, but like, Mullarkey has not only looked good recently, but he's training with the right people. And to be honest, if he can take the damage early and then keep going in the fight, this is a very tough fight to call. So many outliers, but I actually like Mullarkey a little bit in this fight, but we're going to go with Devonte Smith as a minus 170 for the line to kind of gauge where things are. So let's take a look here. I see Plus 105 for Mullarkey opener, now about a plus 134. Devonte Smith, man, opened as a minus 120 and now seeing about a minus 150 to a minus 155. Guys, I'm getting pretty good at calling these lines within 20 points. It makes sense to me why this would be the case. He just has that look, right? The powerful look, the guy that's been able to take guys out in the past. And Mullarkey's got that style where people either don't want to trust him or don't believe that he can do things to guys like Devonte. But in my personal opinion, that's a live dog line. And similar to the Nate Manis fight against Gravely, I think this is the exact same thing. There's so much juice right now on Mullarkey that if this went through the first round and he did take a lot of damage, man, I would be open to sprinkling on Mullarkey pretty easily for that second and third round. Now for one of my, what I would consider a favorite fight for small reasons. You know, Bethe Correia and Karol Rosa. Now, Karol Rosa is a fighter that I've had my eye on for quite some time, and I wish I could talk about her more, but the girl just has so many canceled fights over the last little bit that, like, we just haven't seen her much since 2019, and the thing about her is, in her most recent fight, we saw her neutralize a striker like Jocelyn Edwards, and there's a really fun fact about this fight that I want to take into consideration here, and Bethe Correia needs to avoid the ground for one reason alone, and anybody that has ever taken down Bethe Correia in a fight has never lost. So basically that's saying if any time that Correia has been taken down in a fight, she's lost the fight. The only person to beat Bethe Correia without a takedown is Raquel Pennington, and that was actually a split decision. So in my opinion, I think Karol Rosa is strong. She's got good grappling, but she also has good striking, and I think for her, that striking should only be designed to start setting things up. I don't think she wants to get in a brawl in this fight, and getting the fight to the ground as soon as possible while doing damage is probably her easiest ticket to winning this fight. And so I don't want to spend much more time on that. I think Rosa deserves to be about minus 300 favorite on this fight because she's got so many ways to win, and we know where Bethe Correia has issues, and I don't think that she's going to have such an advantage in striking to be able to take on a girl like Karol Rosa. So I'm going to look at this line here, and oh my god, if you jumped on an opening line of minus 275, congratulations. So I said minus 300. Opening line was pretty close. Correia opened as a plus 235 and now is a plus 450 on betonline.ag. And, you know, Karol Rosa on average looking like a minus 600 to a minus 700 favorite. I hate that line so much. It is one that I would consider parlaying, but unfortunately, there's zero opportunity there. We might have to dig a little deeper to find some value, but next up, Antonina, Shevchenko, and Casey O'Neill. And I don't think there's a fighter in the UFC that has my number more than Antonina Shevchenko. Till the Andrea Lee fight, I was just like her record, I was alternately picking that. But, you know, Andrea Lee proved that if she can get into a position, control, she was very patient and was able to deal quite a bit of damage there. The one fight that I really want to kind of praise Shevchenko for was the Ariana Lipski fight. We went against her in that fight primarily because of what we saw in her previous fight and domination. Ground and pound domination, wrestling, grappling, you name it. She was dominating that fight from the outset, and I think she earned that win in a big way. But now she's getting a girl like Casey O'Neill, and there's small reasons why I love Casey O'Neill so much, and the biggest one is she just gets better as the fight goes on. You look at the Lara Procopio fight, the first round was actually so close, and then you just saw Casey O'Neill smell blood. And when I use the term smell blood, it's not just about the blood on the face. You notice your opponent getting tired. You notice your opponent taking more damage from you, and that's when she just goes hard. She's a violent fighter in the grand scheme of things, and I love the way she attacks when she knows she should. I think that she's a smart fighter for the most part, but is hittable. And that's where I think Antonina Shevchenko could have some success early on, where she can maybe land a few things, but I don't think that she's going to be taking on a fighter like Ariana Lipski, where it's just going to be so easy to take her down and, you know, making a home at Extreme Couture. And I think 10 Planet Jiu-Jitsu is where she does her grappling. She's shown off all of this stuff in her short UFC career so far. We've seen the best from her. So I really think that Casey O'Neill deserves to be a favorite, about a minus 165, minus 170. There's so many ways for her to kind of read the fight and get through, and I think that she's going to be a handful for Antonina. So let's take a look at the lines. Your boys try to speed up because this is getting out of hand. Casey O'Neill, minus 300 opener, down to a minus 225, minus 230 favorite. Very fair line. Antonina Shevchenko, plus 250 dog, now closer to that plus 180, plus 190 range. I think that's fair. My bad about the order of fights, because as I'm going to the lines, I can tell that this has shifted a lot since my notes. But let's get into Jared Gordon and Joe Selecki. Joe Selecki, man, we can talk about how good his grappling is, but I think his underrated striking is what's going to get him the W in this fight. Jared Gordon has shown some good technical striking against guys like, Chavez. We had him winning that fight as a technical striker. Chavez is kind of wild, and we know that Gordon can be very technical. Now, the big thing about Gordon that I want to mention is, in his fights, this guy's got 16 takedowns in 8 fights, but has averaged 0 submission attempts in 15 minutes. So, if you didn't think that Joe Solecki was going to get submitted before, this should prove without a shadow of a doubt that he's not going to get submitted. Now, for Solecki, what we saw from him against Jim Miller is what made me so happy about what, we can expect from him moving forward. And this is a fight where I just see him being able to win, especially as the natural lightweight. I think that Gordon's going to have a tough time with that size difference as he, switches that weight class. And it's hard for me to see any real ways, especially over 3 rounds, for Gordon to win this fight unless it turns into a striking battle that he kind of shows the upper hand. But like I said, the lines are very close. Jared Gordon, Solecki open as a pick'em, and now you have Gordon about that plus 110, plus 105 dog, with Solecki around that plus 135. Minus 135, minus 130 line, and we had him about minus 140. Let's go, guys. Too easy. Next fight, I got 40 seconds, so obviously main cards can be rough, but Alexander Hernandez and Mike Breeden. Now, Mike Breeden, the thing I loved about him from the get-go, crazy good heart, sneaky strikes. We talk about the knee against Brandon Jenkins, LFA. That really kind of skyrocketed his career into kind of the mainstream areas of things where we can all start noticing him a little bit, and that's what I think he's going to have to do here. Be poised, be calm, keep the fight going, keep himself in areas where he can still win the fight, and avoid the big shots. The one thing about Alexander Hernandez that I've always noticed is a lot of muscle on his body, kind of gets drained because he throws with so much power, but he's getting better in those areas, and the guy's basically a coach now at Fortis MMA, so all of the right things are going for him. He just needs to get the big wins. And with that said, timer's up. Hernandez minus 275 favorite. I think that there's a lot of reasons to believe that even over a regional veteran like Breeden, he's going to be able to get the win. So let's take a look here. We've got Alexander Hernandez minus 300 opener, minus 700 on betonline.ag, where everybody's kind of doing their promos. And then Breeden plus 250 opener, plus 450 live line. I mean, that's pretty massive in my opinion. I didn't expect it to be that bad, only because of Hernandez's, sometimes shaky performances. But the kid's paid his dues since the Cerrone fight, and I think everybody's falling in love with him now. So let's keep that, timer going now, and we're going to start it back up here, and just hope that we get there. We're going to monitor those extra minutes. Let's go. Misha Serkinov, Krzysztof Jodko. This is a fight where I think, as much as a Canadian, I love Misha, and I really hope that he's able to put together something in this fight, but there's a lot of things that stand out for me in his fights, and if he's not able to find a lot of success early, he tends to struggle. And the thing with Jotko is he should have the striking advantage here, and he's going to throw kicks. He's got a lot of power in his hands, and I think that both these guys can have cardio issues late, and if Serkinov wants to have his way, he needs to work this fight to the ground as quickly as possible. I think Jotko can get a little uncomfortable there, but here's the thing. Recency bias, 87% takedown, and activity alone, you have to give the edge to Jotko. I think it'll be a close fight, but if Serkinov's not able to use his strength and grappling early in the fight, I think Jotko is able to strike his way to a victory no problem in this one. And I say that with a heavy heart because I really have enjoyed Serkinov's rise back up here. But I'm going with Jotko as a minus 145 favorite. Like I said, he should have the striking advantage across the board, and 87% takedown defense for some of the fights he's had should spell for a pretty impressive performance. So let's take a look at the lines. Guys, I'm on fire, man. Misha Serkinov, plus 140 opener, now a plus 115, plus 110, closer to that pick'em range, and Jotko open as a minus 160. Now we're seeing about a minus 140, minus 135 on betonline.ag. So, guys, these are some tough fights to call, and I think if there was any single fight, take a look at them. And when they're that close, I think live betting is just one of the most fun things you can do in these cases. I think about the Fluffy submission. That was one of my best live bets of all time against Vieta, and that paid off. So keep those in mind, because anytime it's close, that's what you want to ride. Cowboy Oliveira and Nico Price. Now, few things that I don't like about Cowboy in this fight. He looked great at the weigh-ins, but He gets tired. He's in a battle right now with a pretty good striker, and I think that he's going to rely so much on the takedowns and the grappling that a guy like Niko Price, who's been able to defend, the majority of submission attempts against him, I think that the takedown defense at 66% is relatively good enough because I think that he brings the action. You look at the guys he's fought in the past, such good strikers, right? Jeff Neal, Vincent Luque, and the only guy to really submit him is Vincent Luque with that beautiful Darce choke that I have talked about far too much, but that's a finishing move to him when it comes to groundwork, and those are top tier strikers, all considered title challengers at one point in their careers, and if not, down the line as well. That's what makes me kind of scared for Cowboy in this fight. I just can see him faltering very early in the striking game, and then all of a sudden he's more of a beat up body, try to lunge for takedowns, get the submissions going. He tries to use kicks, but I think a guy like Niko Price can just take so much damage that the striking game of Oliveira could be just too little for him to muster up any type of offense to throw Niko off his game, and I just don't think there's going to be much on the ground either for him. So let's take a look at this guy. We got Alex Oliveira as a plus 120 dog. I had Niko written down as a minus 150 favorite. And, guys, open as a minus 140, but now we're seeing him as high as a minus 210 on Bodog. So obviously the lines are starting to reflect just how much better on paper Niko is as an MMA fighter. Obviously, Cowboy started his career a little bit later, and I think it's going to show in that fight. Niko's had some good battles, man, and I think that's going to be one that really kind of puts him in the next realm. And now it's the fan favorite fight. We got Kevin Holland against Kyle Dawkins. Kevin and Kyle, I feel like that could be a Disney show in the making. But Kevin has spent a majority of his time in Hendrickson. We know that Hendrickson is very popular for the wrestling in MMA because we saw what he did to GSP. I think that was a fight, even as a Canadian who might not have the same love for GSP that other guys do. Hendricks put on a show. Obviously, we know with Hendricks there's some things that we could talk about at a later date. But when it comes to wrestling in MMA, he's a big, big dog. And I want to talk about a little, the grappling game for Kevin, I feel like, is an unsung hero here. I think we play so much into what has happened to fighters recently, and for him, it's just, the guy's such a good grappler, and we saw what he did to Jacare, and to really spell it out, I think he does great against grapplers that even want to take a fight to the ground. It's the wrestlers that he's trying to work on, and there is indications of Kyle wanting to just take this fight to the ground and kind of just work him, but, Kevin seemed very, very confident that he's got the right body of work under him in this training camp to try and make this more of a fight than he did against Brunson, and let's be real, Kyle Dawkins is not the Brunson wrestler, and so maybe Holland does have. Here's the thing about Kevin Holland. If you go look at his history, not only is he one of the fastest growing fighters on the regional scene for like the last 6 years, but the guy's got 17 fights since 2018, including 2 grappling bouts. So for me, it's just he's so active, and I think that he's gotten so many looks. And for me personally, when this man has a chip on his shoulder, he performs so damn well. And I think that's what we're going to see from him in this one. Such a hard fight to call, right? If he can't beat the wrestling, Kyle Dawkins might have his way with him, but I do believe that the distance striking, the big right hand, and what I would consider kind of an upper hand on the ground as a BJJ practitioner should give Holland a bit of an edge in this fight. I'm going with the minus 160 line. I could go on and on about Kyle Dawkins, but if you go through my YouTube page, I have not talked about a fighter more. I've been so high on him. I think that the UFC's actually thrown him to the wolves a little bit with guys like Brendan Allen, Kevin Holland. The guy's barely even fought 5 times in the UFC yet. Phil Hawes, I think, is on there too. So that's crazy to me. And the guys just keep going. He's a gamer. His brother just got the Derek Lewis fight. So a lot of good things that are happening for these guys. So I'm still going to go with Holland as a minus 160. Let's take a look here. I mean, talk about a pick'em as an opener, and now a minus 180 to a minus 170 for Kevin Holland. Kyle Dawkins now sitting about a plus 150. I mean, that's pretty much across the board. Some people are trying to rob you at a plus 130. So if you're a Kyle Dawkins fan and you're seeing lines of plus 130, go to another book. And the main event, ladies and gentlemen, and we just talked about how hard some of these fights are to call. Well, Thiago Santos and Johnny Walker, pretty hard to call, right? Johnny Walker's best stat, in my opinion, is 72% striking accuracy. I think against a guy who's under 50% in Thiago Santos, that's going to be a problem early in the fight. The thing about Thiago Santos is if he can get out of that first round and start to grind fights, he looks pretty good. You talk about his record, of 4-3 over the last little bit here, but the 3 losses are kind of interesting, right? John Jones in a title fight, Rakic, who is probably one of the fastest growing names in the light heavyweight division, and Glover Teixeira, who has been a perennial title challenger for as long as I can remember. And so That's how good he's been. And the last person to knock him out was David Branch in 2018. And like I said, 4-3 since then. I think that he has to be patient. I think he has to put together his combos a lot better than he has in the past, because a guy like Johnny Walker is going to rush forward. He's going to be very high action early in the fight. And for me, I think that's the areas where Johnny's always had to work on. You talk about the Corey Anderson losses and things like that. It's just, you got to be smart when you're taking on some of the bigger names in this game. And I think for him, being responsible and staying out of the way early and reading his opponents, getting the distance down, all of that stuff should spell into more of a dominant fight as well, instead of maybe a back and forth event that just kind of goes his way towards, down the stretch, or vice versa for Thiago Santos as well. I think that when you look at the Krylov fight, you look at the Corey Anderson fight, there's a lot of learning opportunities for him there, and I think this is a fight where you're going to see him really implement that. I think the 72% actually it stands out like a sore thumb for me, and I think he's going to be able to land pretty well early in the fight, and that's where Thiago Santos, if he's not patient, if he's not gauging distance, if he's not looking for takedowns to maybe do some ground and pound work of his own to tire out a guy like Johnny Walker, it's going to be a long night for him. So we talk about the lines. I had Thiago Santos as a -145. I'm a little off from that as an opener, -171 opener, but guys, -150 live line. I guess -145. I am on the ball today. And, with that said, Walker has a +149, now looking at +134, +120. That's a live dog in my opinion as well, man. I think that line's pretty big. I believe this fight should be a pick'em. I think that Santos has a lot of experience under his belt, but Johnny Walker's got a pretty big, outlier aspect to his game where he could probably finish just about anyone if he's given that opportunity. So that's UFC Vegas 38, guys. I mean, obviously went over the time quite a bit. I really think we should figure out a penalty for me if I keep going over like this. Maybe every minute I should be doing something. So if you have any ideas, throw it in the comments. I'm going to keep this going. Like I said, every Friday or Saturday when I can get this up. For me, the main thing is getting through the weigh-ins and also making sure that the fights aren't getting canceled or moved around, stuff like that. I hope you guys enjoyed this show. I had a great time doing it. I'm sweating buckets now because I'm trying to do this under 15 minutes. Obviously hit about 25 today, but I promise, guys, we're going to get it soon. Enjoy the fights. Peace.